What if I told you that this, the large public baths in Mohenjo-daro, is closer to us in time, around 4,500 years, than it is to the first farming settlements anywhere in Indus Valley altogether? More time has passed between the first farming evidence in Indus Valley and the high point of Indus Valley civilization, almost 5,500 years between that and us, which is around 4,500 years. Why did it take so long for civilization to start? So first off, we have to define what we mean by civilization. Now this is a difficult task because in everyday usage, civilized and uncivilized are used as value-loaded terms, right? Today if you call someone uncivilized, that usually means that they're not behaving in a way that you think is appropriate. But in a historical definition of the term, which I'll be using in this video, none of us alive today, except maybe a few uncontacted tribes, are uncivilized. None of us are uncivilized. We are all a part of some form of civilization or the other. So what does that term mean then? Civilization is a form of society, a complex form of society, which is some sort of urban character, some form of government, some kind of division of labor, and also some form of writing. Indus Valley, Egypt, and Mesopotamia are characterized as civilizations not just because they started farming. In fact, farming has been found in a lot of different places. The highlands of Turkey, this place in Uttar Pradesh near Nepal, parts of Central Africa, etc. However, it is when farming happens at a certain scale, at certain locations, that a lot of these other things come together. Urban character, some form of government, writing, division of labor, to form complex societies that we call civilizations. So why did this not happen earlier? Why did thousands of years pass between the start of farming and the start of civilization? And why did this happen only at a few specific locations? Now, if you had watched the first couple of videos that I had done on this topic, you may be a little surprised, because I had given a narrative which kind of went like this. We were hunter-gatherers for a very long time, like 290,000 years, and then climate change, and then civilization, right? Yes, I'm not going against what I said in the beginning. In the long run history of humankind, the thousands of years between start of farming and start of civilization is inconsequential. It's only 1% or so compared to the 96% of time spent as hunter-gatherers. But this is like a fractal, right? There's a large pattern. Hunter-gatherer, climate change, civilization, which holds even when you zoom in, because, and this gets really interesting here, there have been multiple climate change episodes within this 10,000 year period, each of which would have led to some kind of change in society. Now I know what you're thinking, right? Can we as a species never get a break from climate change? Trust me, I thought the same thing. The other disclaimer, of course, is that complete climate determinism is a very lazy narrative. Human societies are far too complex to be affected by just one factor alone. But climate change has affected far more of our transition from farming to civilization than is known. So that's what I wanted to explore in this video. Now, each of these transitions are quite fascinating, yes, and if they had to be done in detail, they would require individual videos. But for someone who is being exposed to this for the first time, that would be quite boring. So I'll skip ahead and tell you the overall pattern. Now, each of these changes have been documented very well in this overall region of West Asia. So that's where I'll be exploring this. Trust me, I would have loved to do it somewhere in South India, but as far as I know, it's not as well researched, at least in the books that I read. So we'll explore this region. Ice caps start melting from around 20,000 years ago, right? But this is a very slow process, and it's only by around 14,500 years ago that the environments that hunter-gatherer cultures are used to, steppes and grasslands, have changed into trees and forests. We have the earliest evidence of some kind of settlement from the Natufian culture who had seasonal habits. These were settlements that they returned to during a part of the year. So there was some hunting and gathering, some harvesting of wild cereals, but still no agriculture. This went on for nearly 1500 years, and then the climate changed again. We had a short 1200 year pulse of very cold conditions called the Young Dryas, and then the climate warmed again and the rains returned, and this period called the Holocene climate optimum was warmer and wetter than even today. This is the part where the Sahara was green the last time. And if you look at what is happening with the Natufians, we see even bigger settlements, bigger houses, more communal structures, and importantly, the first evidence of agriculture. And then, you know where I'm going with this, right? The climate changed again. It was essentially a series of short climatic disturbances. A few hundred years where it was warm and then cold again and then warm again. But eventually, the very warm and wet period of Holocene climate optimum changed to the slightly colder and drier period that we are in today. The small isolated settlements which practice settled agriculture. And this is still only a very, very small proportion when compared to the hunter-gatherer communities which is all around the world. The communities which practice farming exclusively are still very rudimentary farming communities centered around the household without much pottery or literacy. If you saw such a settlement today, you would think of them as extremely backward. But the important point is, a lot of such farming communities were established in a few places between 7000 and 5000 BC. So how do we go from that very primitive agricultural settlements to, well, this civilization and the modern society? The rise of a state, put very simply, a state is some form of government and authority which kind of takes over earlier tribe, clan, band and family relations. The rise of a state is much debated in anthropology and history, and there are too many competing theories and it's much too long to be condensed into one single video. So I'll just briefly summarize the theory which I found the most probable. Basically, by the time between 7000 and 5000 BC or so, agricultural communities in certain specific locations, parts of Indus Valley, parts of Mesopotamia and parts of Egypt, had reached a certain stage that when the last stage of climatic disturbances happened, they could not just pack up and move like their ancestors had done. The region around them was too hostile or they had reached a certain level of development. Basically, they decided not to pack up and move. Instead, they decided to intensify their subsistence patterns in the same location. Human communities went beyond the ties of tribe, band and clan to start coming together to pool their labor, build cities, have better irrigation, start writing, division of labor and all of that to navigate an environmentally stressed world. And once this form of organizing human societies starts becoming prominent, it also starts spreading, absorbing other groups of people who may not have felt the need to invent or live under such a system. So what is your takeaway going to be from this long history lesson other than the fact that humans have been affected by climate change for a long time? I have two. Firstly, almost all of us belong to large political units today, whether it be nations or even going further back into history, kingdoms and empires. It's easy to think that this is somehow natural or some biological fact of humankind, right? Like given enough time, all of us will combine to form these large political units. Maybe that's not the case. Just like how our agricultural way of life was a particular response to a particular historic climatic condition, maybe so is the way that we organize human society. If we had just one climatic shock at the end of the last ice age instead of several like we actually had, maybe we'll still be living in isolated agricultural communities like these all over the world. Secondly, it's easy to get the wrong lesson from this. Humans have dealt with climate change in the past and we seem to be better off because of it. So maybe we'll be okay this time as well. No, because firstly, our ancestors were not the ones causing the climate change in the first place. And There was no coordinated human response to climate change in the past. It was just isolated communities at different parts of the world responding to or failing to adapt to changes that they perceived as local. All of us alive today have that survivorship bias. Obviously, our long ago ancestors survived that climatic change, so we can sit here smugly and talk about how humans survived climate change, disregarding all of the lives that are lost in the past. That is not going to be true for this climate crisis. Some of us and some of our descendants are going to suffer and are going to die in the ongoing and upcoming climate crisis. That's a statistical certainty. From all of this knowledge we have about the past climate crisis, what we can do is think about the fundamental changes that this climate crisis will bring, work together to make sure that we minimize suffering and not lose a lot of what we hold dear. Thank you, and I will see you in the next one, hopefully.